Our next speaker is Brother G.V. Ravishankar. He is the grandson of the great scholar and Vedic Pandit Brahmashri Gandhikota Subramanya Shastri, and who was a chosen instrument to reveal the most sacred Sai Gayatri. In fact, it happened almost 43 years to the day. It happened on the 24th, the eve of Christmas, 1977. So Brother Ravishankar joined the university in 1981 for his BCom and received the all-rounder gold medalist. He was the all-rounder gold medalist in 1985. He then finished his MCom and was blessed to join as faculty in the Vrindavan College. And he spent 11 cherished years in the divine presence. He and his brother Sanjay both excelled at photography and videography and did full justice to the ample opportunities given by Bhagawan. He is now a senior director at S&P Global Market Intelligence, New York. Over to you, brother.
Sairam, my grateful pranams at Swami's lotus feet. Dear brothers and sisters, thank you all for this golden opportunity to recollect and relive Swami's presence. I'll just share my screen here so we can have a look at some pictures Swami gave me the opportunity to take. Can you all see the screen?
No, not yet.
Not yet, okay, sorry.
Yes, sir.
Okay. So I'd like to start off, again, as pranams to Swami's lotus feet. And this picture actually I took, or Swami allowed me to take back in around 83 or 1984 during the inter-campus games. As a photographer, we had some opportunities to sit near Swami, other times from far away. So when we're far away, we had to use our zoom lens, and other times when we were close, sitting at Swami's feet, had the opportunity to meditate on his feet. And so one day I was sitting there, and Swami was sitting in the stadium. This was before the big stadium was built. And there were steps on the side of the hill and a little shed on top. And under the shed, Swami was sitting and watching the teachers' games, actually. And it was a really fun time. Swami was having a lot of fun watching the lemon and spoon race between the teachers, all sorts of activities. And so here I zoomed in on Swami's feet, because ultimately it is his feet that really are the solace for all of us. Swami was really the photographer. I think my brothers who are here on the call and others who took photos will clearly say that unless Swami really wants, you're not going to get a picture. These couple of photos were from 1988 in Kodaikanal, and as you can see, there's some brothers in the background taking photos with their cameras. And here Swami is holding an 8mm video camera, or film camera, actually, movie camera. I would say it's not video, but movie. And I forgot who had this. Maybe it was Radhakrishna Garu. And Swami picked it up and started taking some videos or movies, I would say. And it was such a nice time with Swami in Kodaikanal, the informal side of Swami. And here Swami on the left side is, looking through the lens there. And then on the right side, just talking with others about the camera, how heavy it is. And then suddenly he saw me taking pictures, and then as I was taking a picture, he quickly shielded his face. It was such a funny moment and nice moment, and it was nice to be part of that moment where Swami was hiding his face because I was taking pictures there. So this is the playful side of Swami, where he would give us the opportunity to spend time with him. As I said, ultimately, Swami is the real photographer. And this photograph was in the same trip in 1988 in Kodaikanal. Swami had taken a whole bunch of MBA students from Puttaparthi and the teachers from Vrindavan, and also some teachers from the school. And we spent 30 glorious days with Swami, breakfast, lunch, tea, dinner with Swami, and you all know the stories of how Swami would interact. So one day Swami told everybody, get in the bus, let's go to a devotee's house. And he wanted to go to a devotee's house to take some pictures at the side of a hill. And you can see in the background, the mountains. So at the edge there, it's actually just drops off as a cliff. And Swami took photos with all the students, individual photos at the edge of the cliff there. It was beautiful. In the background, all you would see is hills and clouds. So there was this rose garden, and you can see the rose garden there. And so there were a few of us with, taking photos. Some of the students had smaller cameras, others had bigger cameras. And there was also, Radhakrishna Garu with his camera. He certainly, I would say, is, the premier photographer of Swami. And then you had Padmanabhan, who was taking pictures. I had my cameras. And in those days, you know what? These were 35 mm film cameras with motor drives to advance the pictures so that you could advance the film. And we had our big equipment. We were carrying big bags. I had a bag having 2 cameras, 3 lenses, 2 flashes, because with Swami you needed to carry all of this. It was not the digital days where you could just fire off pictures. Even during digital days, it's an art. But in those days, you had to have 20, 30 rolls of film on hand, because suddenly Swami would want to take individual pictures. And these films were, 25, 24 or 36 in a roll. So here we were, very serene, cool setting of Kodaikanal. Swami's walking around the rose garden. And here we were, everybody was quiet. And us photographers were the noisy people, in the sense our cameras were the noisy part of it. We'd as soon as a shutter clicked, it was a sound. The motor drive hitting, that was another sound. And you multiply that by 3 or 4 photographers, it was getting a little noisy. Then Swami looked at us and said, hey, photographers, you're carrying such big, big cameras, so much noise. Do you want to see how I take a picture? And so Swami came up to that rose that you see there, the yellow rose, then waved his hand in his beautiful way and created this beautiful hologram of that particular rose. It was a 3D hologram of that rose, and he showed it to everybody. It was such a beautiful moment. The divine photographer taking a photo right in front of us and searing these memories in our hearts. This was something I'd never forget. Here's another picture of Swami. Somebody had a little 110 Instamatic camera, and you can see it's a very small camera. Basically, the whole camera is really the 110 millimeter cartridge, and it was just had it, and then you had a little pinhole lens there. And Swami looked at it and said, "Hey, Idhentra, and what is this?" It's a little small camera, and Swami, you could see his expression there. So it was so nice to see Swami interacting, and ultimately that's a blessed camera there. So here's, I included this picture of a contact sheet. And, this is how, as photographers, we had to organize ourselves in the olden days. As I said, I had a 2 35 mm cameras, and I'm ever grateful to Swami for the opportunity to take the pictures. I'm ever grateful to my parents for supporting me through this process of taking pictures of Swami, recording the events of the avatar's life, and grateful to my brothers in the US who would send me camera equipment. And so I had an Canon AE1 program. It was a manual focus camera, and I had a 28 to 55 mm lens, and then a 75 to 210 zoom lens, and then 2 Vivitar 285 flashes. Then after a year or so, when the EOS 650 camera came out, that was an autofocus camera. But till then, for a few years, it was all manual focus, and you had to be really quick. You know how Swami is. Swami is very fast and doesn't wait for you. And so we had to capture moments, setting the aperture and the other settings and taking and focusing. And also the other big thing I wanted to mention is you had only 36 shots in a roll. And so you couldn't keep firing off. So you had to be a little prudent with what you took. And so you didn't want to miss a moment, because if you quickly fire off 36 shots and then you have to change roles, that's a problem, because that's the time Swami would actually do something big. So you never wanted to miss that. So we had contact sheets printed. And I remember, whenever we had photos we had to take of Swami, individual pictures in Vrindavan of Swami, or in Puttavarthi, especially in Vrindavan, we had the opportunity of Bangalore being close. So on some occasions, Swami would bless the students to take the photo, take individual shots. But as photographers, we had a responsibility. You had to get these photos back to Swami pretty quickly. As we know with Swami, you have to be, everything has to be fresh, whether it's the food that you serve for Narayan Seva, whether it's the items that you give to people. You don't just sit on them for a long time, give them away for Narayan Seva. And in the same way with photographs, if you take a photo of Swami, you have to, those 200-300 pictures of students with Swami, you had to get it back to Swami quickly. So I remember it was almost like a big race. As soon as Swami would finish darshan, we'd take all the pictures, and then Swami would go back inside and close the door. That's when we'd run back. I'd run back to my parents' flat there, and my father would immediately, it was like a coordinated dance or an effort. My father would quickly get a taxi to go to Bangalore. This was, remember, back in 1980s. And so we'd get a taxi to go to Bangalore, race to EGK and Sons on MG Road, and sit there in the studio there to take pictures. And we had an arrangement with EGK that when I came at the last minute, you guys better develop these quickly so that we can then return it back to Swami. So they also were cooperative that way. Everybody had this love and regard for Swami. So I'd sit there, get the photos printed, but then you'd get only first, you'd have to get the contact sheet done, and also, 3.5 by 5 pictures. Then from those, you'd have to order multiple pictures. And then so you'd get the cabinet 5 by 7 pictures done. And then once you have the stack of a few hundred pictures so that Swami can distribute, the next part of the race was to race back to Vrindavan. And then invariably you'd get stuck at the Vrindavan, the Whitefield train tracks gate there. So then you leave the car on the other side, quickly run. And why was it a race? Because the race was to come back and offer these to Swami before Swami came down in the afternoon. So you would actually run, go and give it to somebody at the door and have them send it up to Swami. And Swami would invariably accept it. Out of his mercy, he would take it. And so then that was the beauty of when Swami walks out, when he opens the Trayi doors, and he'd be carrying that stack of photographs, and then he would one by one give it to all the students. That was the satisfaction. That was the beauty of Swami, because ultimately when Swami wants to give, we have to make sure that he has the opportunity to give. Ultimately, he will do it, but we have to put in our efforts there. The next set of pictures are taken in Vrindavan around 1988, 1989. And here Swami is staring into the camera. And I'm sure all my brothers who took pictures would say, when you're staring at Swami, you would be mesmerized. And I would say this was the mesmerized phase of my life with Swami. You'd be zooming into Swami and you would look him eye to eye and he would stare into the camera. And a lot of times, I would be so mesmerized that I'd even forget to click on the shutter to take the picture, and I'd miss these shots. But in this particular picture right in front of Trayi, Swami stared, and I distinctly remember Swami kept staring until I actually fell out of my reverie of looking at him and actually clicked on the shutter. This is another similar picture where he was staring in and waited for me to take that picture. And this is Swami's immense and intense love for all of us. Here's another picture in Kodaikanal where Swami was sitting with the Krishna statue. And I must say, after I printed all these and gave it to Swami, Swami, is a perfectionist, and he looked at it and said, "Oh, I don't like my hair in the background," he said. And the reason was you had that wallpaper in the background that had silver foil. And so when the flash hit it, it reflected back through his hair. Now, I like Swami like this, you know, every picture of Swami you'd love, right? So, but Swami is a perfectionist. But again, he sat there, waited patiently until we took these pictures. Here's a picture I took back in 1982 or 83, I would say. And, you know, sitting in Purnachandra, this is the other aspect of being a photographer. You'd have the opportunity to sit up front, but you know how it is up front in Purnachandra Auditorium with thousands of people, and you would have probably a few square inches to sit only, and everybody sitting on top of each other. And so finally sitting for 6 hours through the programs, your feet would become like pretzels and they'd go numb. But you'd have to get up and quickly take a shot of Swami, because Purnachandra, when you're up front, the stage is a little higher, and Swami sitting on the stage is a little higher on top. So you can't take from where you're sitting, because then it would be up into Swami's face from down. So to get the same eye level, you'd have to quickly pop up like a, like a jack in the box, take a picture and quickly come back down again. So here's Swami on the Jula. And why I like this picture is because of Swami's lips there. Those are the days Swami used to eat pan. And so this is a picture of Swami from the days of pan. Again, that facet of Swami. Here's another picture around the same time, Swami on his birthday, walking in Purnachandra Auditorium. And again, you see his beautiful lips there, red with pan there, and blessing the devotees. The other aspect of being a photographer, I would say, is that of capturing the events in the life of this avatar. It's good to have that great personal experience and that eye-to-eye connection with Swami, but also the responsibility is there to make sure that you capture these golden moments. And so this picture, I'm ever grateful to Radhakrishna Garu, because Radhakrishna Garu is the one who asked Swami, Swami, can you sit on this chair once and we'll take a picture? And so Swami acceded to his request and sat there. And this was during the 50th anniversary of Swami's declaration of avatarhood. So this was October 20, 1990. And devotees of Andhra Pradesh had come in a procession, and there was a big procession in front of the mandir, in front of that round garden where there's a Ganesh statue. Swami sat there and all of the devotees walked through. And they brought this chair for Swami to sit on. And so it was put into the hall here, Mandir Bhajan Hall. And Swami sat for all of like 2 seconds. And in those 2 seconds, you had to quickly take these pictures. So this is, again, those golden moments with Swami. These were during Dasara time. Again, fantastic times with Swami. And at the bottom right is one of my favorite pictures, because there's a Veda Purusha sitting in front of that sacred fire. And Swami would bless those pandits. Swami would create gems. Swami would create akshantalu and put it straight into the fire. And sitting up front, you could see all of this. And we had to capture these glorious moments of the avatar. Again, I'm motoring through these because I don't want to take a lot of time, but this is at Hillview Stadium, and in the background is actually Ishwarama High School, and Swami would actually was doing Narayan Seva. And so we had to capture Swami walking in front of thousands of devotees there, of Narayanas who came to spend the time with Swami. And you could see the stadium in the background. It's not the stadium, this was actually the open ground. In the back, you'll see top right is a little corner of the ad block that was built recent at that time. And you see Swami walking up and down. And as photographers, again, we'd have our 2 or 3 cameras and equipment, and we'd be running behind Swami, trying to capture all these moments. But Swami would spend hours walking up and down and making sure these Narayan Seva was done properly. And he wouldn't break a sweat. And here we were, we'd be thirsty, hungry, and sweaty after running around. But Swami in this 110, 120 degree heat would be the usual Swami. The other facet of Swami is the casual side of Swami, I would say. Here are a couple of pictures. Swami was sitting in Kodaikanal, where he would just be relaxing and talking to people and posing, and actually posing for us. So that was really nice. And, you know, you see so many different, the majestic aspects of Swami, sitting on the throne in Purnachandra Auditorium or on the Jula. But then you see the loving and familiar aspect of Swami as a family member with you. And there's Swami sitting there. And at the top right, on the right side photograph, you see Swami sitting on that parapet wall. And in the background, you see those little kids so innocently sitting and standing there and doing namaskar to Swami. Beautiful, beautiful times in Kodaikanal with Swami. Here's another picture, again, grateful to Radhakrishna Garu for asking Swami to stand in front of the Benz. And again, Swami would be standing, stood there and really posed in front of his Benz there. And I remember I had this on my, in my cupboard in Vrindavan. I took this picture and then I had enlarged it into an 8x10 and put it into my cupboard as this was my photograph. And one day, one of the students came and asked, "Sir, it's my birthday, I want a photograph." And I used to give off my photos. And that time I didn't have any 8x10s left over. So I gave this one, took it out of the frame and gave it to this boy. And next thing I knew, in the morning, Swami was coming out and, birthday boys were there showing, the tray to Swami. And the boy who I gave this photograph to showed this photo to Swami and then to sign. And so there I was zooming in with my camera because we, as photographers, we stay back. You don't want to be obtrusive. That's the thing with photography. You want to be unobtrusive, but also capture the moment. So I was there trying to capture the moment of Swami blessing that boy. And there I could zoom in and see Swami signing the photo, but then he turns and looks at me and says, "Hey," like this. And then as he's walking by, and he said, "Hey, rare photographs, shop kolo, open your shop, open your shop." Again, Swami chiding, but again, it's not that we ever sold Swami's photos, but it was, these are rare photos of Swami in such a, relaxed setting. This was in Vrindavan, again, beautiful moments. I think those students in Vrindavan would remember when Swami would come out from Trai, and sometimes he would want to walk to the cage where the 10 or 15 deer were. Now, whenever the deer were in the cage, you would always see, the workers walking around with food and all that, and the deer would be casually prancing around. But then when the gate opened and Swami walked into the cages, now all the students would be out, but as a photographer, I could, as lecturer there also, I would slip in and again, hug myself along the chain link fence. And it was beautiful to see how the deer would run to Swami. They don't run for anybody except Swami. And it would be a rush to Swami and they would stop and skid and stop right in front of Swami. And Swami would be, here Swami's feeding an apple to Swami, to the deer there. And it was beautiful to see Swami in that setting there. The other aspect of Swami is you always be ready. And here are a few pictures I put together of Swami, how Swami was so loving with the students. You all know that. And how he would spend his time, he would play games. In the center, you see Swami would just pop his head out from the curtain just to surprise and see what students are doing. Other times on the left side, that was in Kodaikanal in, again, in 1980, sorry, this was in Ooty school in 1988. And all the children in their nice orange sweaters would be sitting and chanting Vedas. This is before Swami came for darshan for them. And so this was in their assembly hall and they had a throne for Swami. And the prayers started, they would do prayers all in one voice. Beautiful to hear all those little children in orange sweaters, chanting mantras, Veda chanting, singing bhajans. And Swami, this was the Lord standing in the background there and the students couldn't see this. But then I noticed Swami was standing in the corner. The curtain had parted a little bit and Swami is just standing there quietly, listening to all of these. And so that was the moment of the Lord with the students. On the right side also is another picture of Swami in Trai, where he was, watching from the curtains and seeing what everybody's doing. And again, the playful side of Swami. Swami wearing a hat, it's very unique there. So this was when Swami, in Kodaikanal, again, 1988, Swami had actually given some money to the students to go and buy hats from a hat seller on the other side of the lake. And he told everybody, here's some money, go buy the hats and don't bargain. And we were wondering why Swami mentioned like that, but he said, just go buy the hats. So everybody went, and we went to that hat seller. And just as Swami mentioned, he was on the other side of the lake, and the student, and he asked, everybody bought a hat, and one of the students bought a hat for Swami too. And so everybody bought the hats, came back, and Swami said, come, let's take pictures. And so we took pictures. And then at that time, Swami then told why. He said, see, this hat seller, he has a big family. And I asked you not to bargain because he's a very proud man. If I give him money, he won't take it. If you just give him extra money, he won't take it. And that's why I said, all of you go buy hats. And with that day, all his hats were sold. And so Swami had that love for that man and made the students and instruments to be able to give him the money. This is how Swami works. And so Swami took that hat that one of the students, so again, this photograph comes from when Swami took that one hat and wore it, again, just for about a second. And I was able to quickly grab one quick picture of Swami wearing the hat. These are photos of Swami on the left side, 1991 in Kodaikanal. In the background, Swami the majestic Swami here amongst nature, and then on the right side, Swami in Vrindavan. And, as a photographer, you'd always had to be ready. Like I said, I had the cameras and film rolls ready. On this one occasion, and this particular picture I remember because Swami gave a life lesson. He said, first, Swami was standing there and all the students asked for photos of it, Swami. So then Swami looked at me and said, hey, Ravishankar, Ilara, come here. Where should we take pictures? Now, first of all, who am I to tell Swami where to take pictures? So I would never dare that. And I said, Swami, mire chappan, mira ekkada chepte akkade. Wherever you tell, there only. And Swami found the best spot. You can see it was nice from the surrounding standpoint and from the lighting standpoint. Then all the students stood in a line, and we had briefed all the students, if Swami is going to take pictures, don't waste Swami's time. I remember in Kodaikanal, in one instance, students were slow in taking pictures with Swami, individual shots with Swami, and Swami didn't like it. And he got upset and said, why are you wasting Swami's time? There are thousands of devotees waiting there. If you don't want to take pictures, I won't take. And he just walked away and the students lost those pictures. So having that experience, we told all the Vrindavan students, the graduating class, if Swami allows you to take pictures, make sure you're quiet, stand in a line, quickly take a picture and go. So all the students would come, stand next to Swami and go. Stand next to Swami and go. It was like that, a procession. It went on for about 5 minutes and we're taking pictures. Then suddenly Swami said, agende, stop. Then he said, do you all see what's going on here? And we all kept quiet. And we were afraid that something happened and Swami would stop taking pictures. Then Swami said, all of you are coming and going. Every student is coming, going, coming, going. It is only the divine that is permanent. And that was, again, a life lesson for us, that Swami is there for all of us. He is the one, we're the zeros. He is the hero. And he is there for us at all times. Beautiful lessons he would give us. These are two pictures very quickly. Again, Swami created this huge diamond when we were there. Some of the students who never went home for holidays, Swami called them into the interview room, and he raised his hand and said, what's in my hand? The student said, Swami, everything. And it was empty hand, but it's really not empty. Then Swami waved and in a flash created this huge diamond. And he explained how he asked, what was the value of this? Everybody said, Swami, priceless. Then Swami asked, but who gives it value? Then Swami explained, it is man that gives value to the diamond. So he explained how one should have that value for man and not for material things. And he showed this. And again, I was there standing in the back taking pictures. Then Swami looked at me and said, hey, Ravishankar, come, take a picture of this. So he kept it in his hand like that, the diamond. And just as I was about to take, he went like this, and it just blew away. And just as I clicked, I missed it because it blew away and he took his hand away, and Swami had a great hearty laugh. And I was happy that I was able to give Swami that laugh. But this was Swami. He took us to the greatest heights in that majestic way, declaring that it is man that gives value. And he saw that sense of awe that everybody had. And then he brought it down to earth and became one of us by joking around with us. This is another instance where Swami, was walking into Trai compound after darshan from Sairam Shed, and he plucked a tulsi leaf. And now naturally Swami, whatever Swami does has a meaning, and we didn't want to, and we knew we had to be ready. So I had my camera ready, and I knew something was going to happen. And Swami walked into the hall and he showed the tulsi leaf in the top left. Then he blew into it, the top right you see there. And on the left side, Swami is holding a golden tulsi that his breath covered it in gold. And at the bottom right, but before when he explained all of this, saying that divinity permeates everything. You think that what you see outside and you get enamored, but look to the divine in everything. And that was Swami teaching us about the indweller. I want to stop now because I know I've taken a lot of your time. But ultimately then Swami blew into the golden leaf and then brought it back to the same tulsi leaf that he initially plucked, and he held it up on the bottom right. You can see that. And then finally in the last act, he just ate it. So that was nice. So I'll end with this, a few pictures of Swami watching in Purnachandra Auditorium, watching some of the student dramas. And you can see Swami, how engrossed he is and how enjoyable he is whenever he spends his time with students. So I'm grateful to all of you for this opportunity to relive these experiences. And I'm sorry I took a little more time. Sairam brothers.
Thank you very much, Brother Ravishankar. It was absolute treat for the eyes. I have no words to say. Thank you so much.